dalam kondisi ketidakstabilan ekonomi yang tentu memiliki banyak faktor, mulai dari kondisi perang di kawasan Timur Tengah yang memberikan dampak secara global, termasuk dirasakan dari kawasan regional seperti dari kawasan Asia Tenggara, termasuk Indonesia yang memiliki dampak langsung bagaimana ketegangan di kawasan Timur Tengah ini memberikan efek terhadap bagaimana pertumbuhan ekonomi ini bisa berlangsung dalam jangka waktu ke depan. Nah, dalam kesempatan kali ini spesial dari MetroTV memiliki kesempatan untuk bisa berbincang langsung bagaimana perspektif dari ASEAN+3 Macroeconomic Research Office sebagai salah satu lembaga ekonomi internasional yang akan memantau bagaimana pergerakan makroekonomi dari anggota-anggota ASEAN plus 3 negara di dalamnya. Sudah bergabung dengan kami ada Mr. Dong He sebagai Chief Economist ASEAN+3 Macroeconomic Research Office. So thank you, sir, for your time with MetroTV. We talk about how the current situation about instability global economy to the regional, also in Indonesia. So, Mr. He, for the first question, from the latest AMRO reports that the ASEAN+3 navigated the 2025 tariff headwind better than expected. But now we are facing the severe energy shock. Based on this condition, what makes this current situation it's more complex for policymakers to manage than the previous tariff and trade issues?
Right. So first of all, the world economy has been battered shock after shock since last year. At first, it was the tariff shock, and then now the energy shock. So this has been a very difficult situation, but the region really has been doing quite well, quite resilient. So as you mentioned, the outturn was better than originally anticipated. So I would say the region entered this particular energy shock from a position of relative strength. Now, what is important to realize is that this is a supply shock that would affect the cost of production. Fuel and gas. These are very important inputs, not only for our daily lives, for our ordinary people's lives, but also for industrial production. It's a supply shock that would hit the cost in the beginning. Then in the future, that might affect the quantities as well. Prices will be higher. So this is also a terms of trade shock for importers, in the sense that your import prices rise faster than your export prices. So that's going to hit the real income of both households and the firms. The firms' profits will get squeezed. Households will feel poorer because they are paying for more, even their ordinary consumption basket. So this is a supply shock in the sense that it would affect output negatively, but it would raise inflation in the short term as well. So for central banks, and also for governments, for both monetary and fiscal policy, this is going to be very challenging. So it's as compared to tariff shock, right? Yes.
Okay, let's talk about if the oil prices sustain above $100 per barrel for the rest of this year. So how deeply will that downgrade the current GDP situation and also inflation forecast for the region?
So the 4% forecast you cited earlier is based on the assumption that oil prices would average about $85 for the whole year. It assumed that the conflict would pretty much end by the end of June and the Straits of Hormuz would be open. Now, if that were not the case, then we can have an adverse scenario, and then oil prices would stay much higher, let's say more than $100, and would stay beyond June, let's say well into the third quarter, and then some of the effects will become much larger, and we could see and the assumption that, let's say, the oil prices stay at $125 for the whole year, then we are going to see output that's going to be much lower than 4%. It will be reduced to 2.5% for the region, and inflation, instead of 1.4%, would rise to 3.3%. So these are pretty large effects, but still, the region would be able to grow for the whole year.
Okay. So with this condition, how do you evaluate the divergent impact of this energy crisis on the major ASEAN+3 economies?
The impact on the economies will really depend on about three factors. One is the exposure of the particular countries to the Strait of Hormuz, for example, how much of your inputs go through that, right? But the second factor is the energy mix. Are the countries having a more diversified energy mix? Some countries rely more on coal, for example, or renewable energies. So the whole region has been moving towards that direction. But also it depends on the policy space, in the sense that whether countries can use monetary and the fiscal policies to cushion some of the impact, particularly fiscal policy. If you have a lot more fiscal policy space, then you can reduce some of the pass-through from oil prices to energy, to retail energy prices. But of course, if you are constrained in terms of policy space, the impact might be much larger. So you can see quite a bit of diversity in terms of both exposure to the Middle East, the energy mix, and the policy throughout the region. So some countries have more space than others, right? Okay.